watching On the Record, and if you just joined us, we are talking about a demand that is being made by groupings that include AfriForum that want Afrikaans to be recognized and to be taught in South African, or at least some South African universities. Now, Ian, if I may come back to you. Now, parallel to this, you guys are talking about establishing a university that will teach in Afrikaans. Can you give us some detail on that?
Yeah, definitely. The university is already functioning. It's called Academia. It is growing by the year. It's now almost 3 years old, and every few months we are adding another module to it. So we're very proud of it, and I think it's the one place where Afrikaans is not under threat at the moment. As we heard previously, and we can discuss it later, Afrikaans is under threat at many of the universities, and we need to create a safe space to conserve that. And I would advise the same thing to other cultural groups.
Who's funding it?
It comes from the Solidarity Movement specifically. It's made up of a whole lot of members who pay membership fees to the movement every month, and through this we can start driving these kinds of projects, like building the university, like having youth initiatives and so forth, and especially focusing once again on the development and the conservation of mother tongue education.
Are there people who are being taught there already?
Yes, there are. There are several students being taught there. We've got 7 places across the country where people can receive classes like we are now, the same kind of technology. Over a camera, they can be in different locations around South Africa, but receive classes over television.
What courses or subjects are being taught?
There are different courses. Some are business administration. There are some parts of accounting specifically, and there are also bridging courses like mathematics and so forth to develop for people to be able to start studying different degrees in the future.
Are you registered? Are you recognized by the
Yes.
relevant authorities?
Yes, definitely. No, it's registered with government and everything, and we actually just opened our new campus as well. So it's doing very well, and it's growing by the day.
Prof? I mean, they have a right to do that.
There's a serious contradiction.
The question is, what happens to the millions of South Africans who can't do that?
I think that these people with economic power in society able to use their economic power to advance their interests. Not all groups in society, linguistic groups, have that power. And one would want to really check who registered them and who recognized their qualifications. Are they recognized qualifications, so that at the end of the exit, when they get certificate, those certificates are actually recognized. That needs to be looked into. I will not accept as given what he is saying, that yes, these are already recognized, because the students going through those processes may find themselves in the end with useless certificates that are not really recognized. But as we go forward, I think it is important. I belong to a group based in Pretoria. It is called Lembede, Tambo, and Pishi chambers, where we want to be able to develop lawyers in South Africa, legal practitioners, lawyers, judges, and so on, to be able to use local languages when they are dealing with legal matters, because there's a lot of problems in our courts when English is used, even when the judge, the legal representatives, and so on are actually speaking the language of the litigants who are in court. So we are promoting that also. So the question of development of African languages in areas of law, science, technology, and is important. And that includes Africans. They can do that. How do you do it is the question. And I think it is the way in which they are approaching it, really trying to use their economic power and so on which is very dangerous and ought to be challenged before those students going through that university find themselves in limbo at the end.
Ian, to someone who says they've heard what you're saying and they probably agree with you on a number of issues. However, when you use language like Afrikaans is under threat, when you say you are looking for or you already have a safe spaces within which to speak Afrikaans and to be taught in Afrikaans, that's something akin to creating this sort of lager mentality and creating your own little homeland, so to speak. That perhaps the best way that you guys should approach this is to actually join forces with other South Africans and actually fight for a recognition of all instead of just Afrikaans, or elevating Afrikaans above other languages. And in that way, you will be making quite a strong statement about your South Africanness and about the fact that as you were saying earlier, you actually care and you want other languages to be elevated.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make there, although I don't completely agree with you on everything. You know, if we go look at Afrikaans specifically across South Africa, especially in the last few months, University of Stellenbosch, Pretoria, University of Northwest, the Free State, Elsenburg Agricultural College, and the list goes on, CPUT in the Western Cape as well. Every single time a group like Fees Must Fall or Reform PIC or Uprising start to protest, the second topic on the memorandum is to remove Afrikaans. Why don't we see Prof, you, for example, coming to fight that fight? And with that, I would like to challenge you and ask, is your course registered with the department? Because ours is, and we followed the right procedure. On top of that, it is only Afrikaans that is always a target. Why is it that a minority group only has a certain amount of rights according to certain political organizations? Why is it that it seems that we only deserve a small amount of human rights just because we are a minority? If you go look throughout the whole of South Africa, Afrikaans is always a target. And I would like to quote something from the UN report that came out a few years ago and from the press statement from last year.
Before you do that, Ian, before you do that, can I ask you? I mean, when you use language like minority groups, you are excluding yourself. You're suggesting that you are not really fully South African, that you are a small group that belongs in some corner somewhere.
Not at all.
That should have rights,
but if you
accorded to you, just you.
If you allow
Isn't
me,
that the problem?
If you allow me to intervene before he does.
It's definitely not the case. If I can just respond to that. The point is this, that you need to have the same discussion with groups like the EFF, like Blacks First, Land First, that always say that Afrikaans people are a minority, whites are a minority, and they need to leave the country. We hear these kinds of utterances, but we don't hear the same questions being asked to them. They are the ones polarizing people, where we are the ones saying, let's rather find a way to improve mother tongue education across the board. Okay. That is truly South African. That is the principle where we built our constitution on, and that is the way we need to go forward in this country to make sure we've got respect and honor between different cultural groups, race groups, and languages throughout the whole republic.
Okay, let's hear what Professor said.
Really, I wanted to intervene there on the question of minorityism. Using the language of minorityism. Every ethnic group in South Africa, every linguistic group in South Africa is a minority. And I don't think there's any majority, any linguistic group that is a majority in South Africa. And that, whether you talk about the larger groups like the Zulu-speaking people and so on and so forth, they are a minority as a group. And Afrikaans speaking, languages, people, white or colored or black and so on, are a minority. Whether you're talking of the vendor people, anybody is a minority in the country. There's no majority people in the country. So we need to have a paradigm of thinking, of being able to understand that out of minorities you create a nation. How do you create it? What are the elements you need to put in it that combines everybody and yet allow autonomy of the various components of the whole? That is the challenge.
Do you accept that challenge, Ian?
I think the Prof is contradicting himself. Earlier he said that it's going to create separation, and now suddenly we need to develop it again. My point is this: we need to find a way to develop mother tongue education across the board for all cultural groups. We are specifically fighting for Afrikaans, but we will support any other group that does it, and that is the way to celebrate the beautiful cultural diversity of South Africa.
Thank you very much, Prof. Last word?
Just to say that the idea of minority groups, yes, they are minority. There's international law protecting minorities and so on. But I think in order to build a nation, you cannot build it on the basis of each group calling itself a minority and pushing its own agenda. Then you don't build a nation. And I believe if we want to build a new South Africa, we want to build a multicultural, multilingual, multiracial society. And we can't build it on the basis of each pulling in opposite directions for their own interest.
Professor Shadrack Goodso, Ian Cameron, thank you to both of you for coming and discussing this. We hope this conversation will continue way beyond this studio. Well, that's where we're going to leave this particular discussion. Up next.